All right, Roger Martin here in Billings, Montana. Good day. I didn't know Nancy was so deep up to her neck, quote unquote, in Ukraine scandals and connections herself. Listen to this.
She had a legislative aide, Ivana Voronovich. She's from the Ukraine and is connected to the Ukrainian embassy, the Ukrainian military, the Ukrainian government, and the Ukrainian party life. Ivana Voronovich was a party girl in the Ukraine and somehow managed to make her way into a position as a legislative aide to Nancy Pelosi. She started her career working at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine, in Kiev. She worked for the Kiev bureau chief who's connected to Nancy Pelosi. One time, Roman tweeted out, "Tell Nancy to keep up the good work." And this Ivana person, she is no fan of Trump whatsoever. Actually, she's anti-Trump. And she tweeted out a Trump balloon, and under it says, "Trump baby balloon gets green light from London mayor." And you can see that she is not a fan of Trump whatsoever. She's a legislative aide working for Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi has ties. She has ties. Schiff has ties. And the Bidens have ties. And remember, all these individuals were tied in to the regime change that happened in Ukraine.
Schiff should be brought up on charges. I don't know why he isn't. Congress isn't doing their job, and neither is the Senate.
Why isn't Congressman Adam Schiff being brought up on charges for fraudulently making up statement and reading it to Congress as if this statement, which was very dishonest and bad for me, was directly made by the President of the United States? This should never be allowed. And he's absolutely right. And we have to remember the Ukraine scandal is much, much larger than Hunter Biden receiving $50 or $60 or $70,000 a month. This whole thing is much, much larger. Remember, the IMF, they gave Ukraine billions and billions of dollars.
So why did the IMF give Ukraine billions and billions of dollars? What are they doing? Why would the IMF give them that much money?
And the U.S. gave billions in aid. And guess what? It's gone missing. Where
It's gone missing? Holy crap.
is it? That's the big question. And the controlling shareholder of Burisma is believed to be held by an entity called Private or Privat Group. The Privat Group or Privat Bank is a global business group based in Ukraine. This group controls thousands of companies, virtually every industry in Ukraine. The European Union, Georgia, Ghana, Russia, and the United States and other countries, steel, oil, gas, chemical, energy, are sectors of this group's prime influence and expertise. None of the group's capital is publicly traded on any stock exchange. This group
Wow.
is controlled by Ukraine's largest commercial bank, Privat Bank, whose owner was Igor Kolomoisky. And this Privat Bank was later nationalized by Ukraine in December 2016, taking 100% control of the banking entity a month after the 2016 U.S. election. Now remember, the IMF, they rushed money into Ukraine in April in a response to what IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde called a major crisis. She went on to hail the government's unprecedented resolve in developing a bold economic program to secure macroeconomic and financial stability. Over the next 5 months, the IMF poured an equivalent of about $4.5 billion into Ukraine, into the National Bank of Ukraine, the country's central bank. Now, what happened to this money, we don't know. It kind of disappeared. And where did it go? Well, we would need a forensic accountant to track all this down. And I just can imagine where this actually went. They're playing golf together.
All right, so Priestman, some other individuals, and Joe Biden, and he knows nothing. Right, he's lying.
And it looks like he does know
Hey guys, Cody's
company executives because this picture was taken in 2014. It's getting worse and worse for the Bidens. This is all coming back to the Bidens. Remember, in other reports, we said soon the spotlight is going to shift. Well, it's shifting. Now, we know the ICIG, we know that they changed the whistleblower complaint form. And the ICIG released a statement.
So Trump says the whistleblower knew almost nothing, and the second-hand description of the call is a fraud, quote unquote. Here we're going to learn some more about Andrew
Message
Jackson.
to Congress. Jackson explained his philosophy. In a country where offices are created solely for the benefit of the people, no one man has any more intrinsic right to official station than another. Offices were not established to give support to particular men at the public expense. Jackson's solution was not to give away handouts nor to have the government control business, which he would have seen as an economic folly and un-American, but instead to sever the corrupt ties between business and government whenever possible. Jackson gave one of his most eloquent denunciations of crony capitalism in his message to the nation on his veto of the Second Bank of the United States Charter. That is the central bank. That's the second central bank here in the United States. Now, Jackson worried that it had become too powerful and unaccountable. Indeed, many politicians were on the bank's payroll. It is to be regretted that the rich and powerful too often bend the acts of government to their selfish purpose. When the laws undertake to add to these natural and just advantages artificial distinctions, the humble members of society, the farmers, the mechanics, and laborers, who have neither the time nor the means of securing like favors to themselves, have a right to complain of the injustice of their government. Jackson relied even more heavily on the concept of peace through strength. To quote a favorite phrase of Ronald Reagan's, Jackson was willing to threaten to unleash American military force even against superior foes in order to get diplomatic concessions out of other countries that he felt were treating the United States unfairly. The United States was not embroiled in any major war during Jackson's presidency, and the country secured more trade agreements than under any previous administration. Now, the establishment called him incompetent. He didn't know what he was doing, but his supporters cheered him on. Jacksonian populism did not destroy America. It energized it. While Jackson had its contemporary detractors, the country was stronger when he left the presidency than it had been before his ascent to the office. He had achieved enormous success, and perhaps just as important, he staved off worrying trends that endangered the republic. Jackson was an honest, dedicated son of the founding who used his presidency to restore what he saw as the original Republican vision for the country, while acting as the great protector from both internal and external threats to the Union. Now, if you take what Jackson did here, like I said in the beginning of this report, and you replace Jackson's name with Trump, you can understand what is going on and why Trump has Andrew Jackson hanging on his wall.
There we are. I'm going to leave it at that. Andrew Jackson was a great president, greater than I ever knew in history or in our classes. I don't think our teachers even knew. Unfortunately, truth of what really matters and who did what in our history has often been twisted and bended according to historians' view, and it may be very incorrect. Again, it's Roger Martin from Billings, Montana. Think of how Andrew Jackson was so important at his time and never got credit for he deserved. And I think the same thing is happening with